And welcome to my channel. In this episode I'm going to be talking about what's happening in the news today regarding prisons. Now every week I'll do prison news and I'll just go about the headlines and talk about what is in the headlines this week. And I'll talk about the ones that are most talked about, the latest news. And I'm talking about in this episode 3 different stories. And the first story I'm going to be talking about is in an Alabama prison. Now, here we are. So, what I do in this topic of prison news, if you're just new to the channel, I've got an app on my laptop what gives us the latest news, as you can see on my screen here now. And I'll pick out a few different stories, the ones that stand out the most to me. Now, the one I'm going to be talking about first is this one. And as you'll be able to see in a second when it loads up, excuse the adverts that keep popping up. And this is unedited. There is no edits in this episode. So here you go for the headline that pops up. And this is the lad here. It was Daniel Williams. And this is his sister that's talking about him. So heartbreaking account of prisoner's final days after rape and assault in jail. So Daniel Williams died after an alleged assault at the Staten Correctional Facility in Alabama. His heartbroken sister, Brittany Robson, wrote on her Facebook profile how she looked after him in his last few days. So Alabama, the correctional facility in Alabama, which is Staten, has a horrendous, history of this sort of behaviour amongst inmates. And it is regarded as one of the most dangerous prisons in America. Or Alabama has quite a few different prisons, and this is just one of them. But all of the prisons in Alabama are known for this sort of behaviour. Now, as you can see on screen here, where I've got the little arrow on, that word there, this is what it's rife for in them sort of prisons. So the sister of a prisoner who died after he was allegedly and tortured in prison wrote a heartbreaking tribute in his memory. Dad Daniel Williams was serving just a 12-month sentence for theft at the Staten Correctional Facility in Alabama when he was discovered in his dorm on October the 27th, just a fortnight before he was set to be released. Initially, officials claimed he had died from a drug overdose, but prison insiders have told Alabama political reporter that he was kidnapped, bound and assaulted and sold out by a fellow inmate for 2 or 3 days. Now, if you're not familiar with them sort of terms and you haven't seen the American programs, sold out, it means exactly what the title of the video says. Obviously, I can't say that word because it'll pop up on YouTube's automated service, and it will not get monetized if you use that word. As stupid as it sounds, that's what happens. But he's been sold out by a fellow inmate. So as you can imagine, what you're thinking to yourself, where was the screws or the correctional facility officers? Where was these officers when all of this was going on? But I'll just show you a couple of videos of what it's like inside Staten Correctional Facility. So this is it here. And inside of this prison, as I just mentioned before, they've got dormitories. So that's the plan of the prison. And this is the dormitories. So all of these prisoners must just be left to fend for themselves. So Daniel, who only had a couple of weeks left on his sentence, was left unattended. But as you can see by his picture, he's not a very big lad. So these are the inmates, or animals should we refer to them as, are doing this sort of behaviour to Daniel. He's only got a couple of weeks left and he's been sold out by another inmate that was probably bullying him, trying to take his belongings off him. He can't defend himself because he's just a small lad, and they've went and done this sort of behaviour to him. So the horrifying incident left Daniel, a dad of a boy and a girl aged 1, brain dead, and his family have now spoken out about their efforts to seek justice as they endeavour to find out what actually happened. Daniel's heartbroken sister Brittany Robinson wrote on her Facebook profile, "I'd take your place instantly so you could have more time with your kids. I so would Daniel. This sissy is extremely exhausted and lost without her Daniel calling her, saying, look what your niece done. Learn how to talk about already." Sorry. "This sister held your hand for 3 days straight. This sister wiped your drool, wiped cold rags on you so your body could cool off in that hospital room. This sister told the nurses to clean you extra because you needed it. This sister made sure you were taken care of when I could. This sister watched you gasp at air, shake to try and breathe. This sister looked at your bruised body, bit her tongue from cussing the guard out at the prison because she knew they'd stop me from seeing you. I told you I loved you. I talked to you even though I knew you couldn't respond. I told you I love you and I needed you to know where you're okay. Oh, Daniel, this shit hurts so hard. I'm really sorry. It's not fair. Please be at peace now." So she's obviously set a GoFundMe page up because it says the devastated family said Daniel's life machine was switched off on November the 5th. Amber, his beloved fiancée, says she was horrified by his condition when she got to see him in hospital. The single mum now faces raising her children on her own. Speaking out, she told a local news station, "I was supposed to tell her about her daddy, like why he isn't here. Why didn't he ever come home? I went to the hospital and the nurses told me that he was assaulted and beaten badly. And when I went into the room, he had bruises all down his arms, like down his fingers. He had cuts up and down and bruises on his legs." Daniel's dad, Terry, heard that his son had suffered an overdose before later learning that he had allegedly been assaulted and had been moved to palliative care. The raging dad said, "I called the warden and I cussed him. I said, dude, you know this is not an overdose case. You know exactly what happened. How is this crap going to happen like this? Well, it's under investigation right now, and that's the last time I even talked to the warden." The devastated dad also claims his son's body was physically abused and insists that his hands had been bound. They also claim Daniel's doctor described the abuse as unlike anything he had seen in a 30-year medical career. The pair demanded as you can see the word there, test to be carried out, but their request was delayed before hospital staff finally examined his body on November the 1st after a lawyer joined the case. At this point, the results of the test are unknown. The family is now calling for justice for Daniel. Terry said, "We've got to stop this. If I can save a couple of lives, you know I'm thankful." He was unable to raise cash to bury his son, who will now be cremated. Terry wrote on social media, "I will let everyone know the date and time once they tell me. Thanks everyone, I really appreciate everything. Daniel, Terry Williams, fly high son. Keep mum and granny company. Justice will be served. I love you, son, till we meet again." Now, if you've got a heart and you're reading and you're listening to what I'm saying here, it's a very disturbing and upsetting case, this one. And it'll bring a lot of people to tears, I bet, when the listener is reading this out, because a young lad like that, a couple of kids at home, he was in for, I think it said theft, had a couple of weeks left. And what sort of way is this to go in a prison where the prisoners are supposed to be protected from the wardens who are supposed to keep an eye on the prisoners, and he's ended up leaving the prison like this in that sort of state and never going back to his family. The Alabama Department of Corrections told the Mirror US on Thursday the 9th of November 2023 an inmate death was reported at Kilby Correctional Facility. Inmate Daniel Terry Williams was found unresponsive in the healthcare unit. So let me go back a second, because I've just showed you the inside of Staten, because I'm sure that's what it said to start with, but let us just clarify this. So yes, so he says he was serving theft at the Staten. I thought I was right, but then it went on further on to say that it's talking about another prison. But I just wanted to go back there just in case anyone picked up on that, like I did myself, and clarify that, because on that it's saying Kilby Correctional Facility. So I think they might have that mixed up a little bit there. But it says, but they were unable to resuscitate him and he was pronounced deceased by the attending physician. On Sunday, October the 22nd, 2023, a possible inmate-on-inmate assault was reported at Staten Correctional Facility. Inmate Williams was discovered unresponsive in his dorm and was transported to the healthcare unit. Medical personnel treated Williams and monitored his condition. The decision was made to transfer him to an area hospital for further evaluation and treatment. He remained at the hospital unit until the family decided to remove him from life support. He was transported to Kilby Correctional Facility for long-term comfort care, where he subsequently died. So that's answered what I've just been on about there, but I just wanted to clarify that in case I got a mistake. So the ADOC Law Enforcement Services Division is investigating the incident. But again, like I just mentioned there, what a very disturbing case. As you can see there, not very old, got the full life ahead of him, and he's been abused in that sort of way. I mean, anybody going into prison for theft and only having a few weeks left on your sentence and being, as you can see, like I've mentioned earlier on in the video, is just a small lad, and he looks like he's been absolutely abused off the other inmates and just taken for a total, well, as you can see when I've just read the story out, it's an absolute horrendous case, this one. But I'll just go back, look at that. Like, imagine living in that dormitory. So see, hey, they've probably got him up in the corner here. And when I've read up on these sort of prisons, the whole lot, I mean, there will be a certain amount of prisoners that wouldn't have been partaking in this. But I've read the stories before where all the prisoners are just going over and taking the turns and using the prison and doing whatever they want to them. So a lot of these prisoners are big, muckly lads, blokes, and they've just seen him as a little victim and just tossed him aside. But wouldn't you think the guards will be coming around every day, walking up and down, checking on every inmate? So if Daniel's been getting used in this sort of way for days upon end, where was the staff? They should have CCTV up in these sort of prisons as well and monitoring them. If you can't get in there, if you're understaffed, they should have wardens walking up and down here, checking the inmates daily to make sure they're safe, because bullying is rife inside of prisons, and more so in these prisons. But I'll leave that story there and I'll move on to the next one, people, because like I say, I've said I was going to mention 3. But another one, this is another disturbing case. I read these stories before I started talking about them first, just to see if they were worthy about reading. So this one is young mum 18 slams cruel prison system after baby dies in her arms inside cell. Rihanna Cleary was 6 months pregnant in the biggest women's prison in the country when she gave birth alone in a prison cell before her baby Aisha died in her arms. The teenage mum of a baby that died in her arms inside a prison cell after her calls for help went unanswered by guards has slammed a coroner after he announced he will not be making any recommendations to prevent future deaths. Mum Rihanna Cleary was forced to bite through her own baby's umbilical cord in a desperate bid to keep her alive as she sat covered in blood until the next morning when the fellow prisoners came to help. Speaking today, the mum has said the system is cruel and will never be a safe place to have a baby. So an 18-year-old lass, I mean, I don't know what the charge is. I've tried to have a look on here and it didn't really say nothing about it. But it's saying they remanded her as go further on, but they've put her into custody because she didn't have a bail address. Surely they could have put her in a hostel or some sort of supportive living. Putting a 6-month, 18-year-old girl in prison just doesn't make any sense. She added that she still doesn't know if the prison officer who ignored her cries for help is still working at the prison, or if they have been sacked, adding that the way prisons are run is all about power and control. Rihanna said, I have lost, don't know if it's Aisha or Aisha forever. So the most important thing is that no pregnant woman ever goes through what I did. I understand that the senior coroner is not making a preventing future deaths report because of all the changes that have been made since Aisha died. But when it comes to prison, what's written on a piece of paper is never what happens in practice. The way the prisons are run, it is all about power and control. They will never be caring places. And I agree 100% over there. Absolutely bang on what you said. So prison officers do not always follow policy. Look what's happened to me. When I pressed my cell bell twice, nobody came. Now the prison officers have got a duty of care. If you press that cell bell, especially someone who is in prison pregnant, and they'll all know about this, because obviously she'll have a file in the office and she'll be at what you would call put at the front of policy procedures. So if she presses her cell bell, it should be there immediately. But obviously they've left her unnoticed. And sometimes when the cell bell goes off, it's inside the office where the prison officer sits, and the bells will be flashing. It makes a noise to start with, but they can press it off, and there's just a red light flashing to say that the bell hasn't been answered. And it's supposed to not go off until they get up until outside the pad, and they press the button outside the pad to knock the bell off. But this bell must have been flashing for hours and they've just haven't answered it. Right, everybody now accepts that all pregnancy in prison are high risk. So why was I sent there? This is why I now support the campaigns of Level Up and No Births Behind Bars to stop sending pregnant women to prison. During a month-long inquest at Woking Coroner's Court earlier this year, it was heard that Rihanna, a young black woman, was a care leaver and had been treated by authorities as a gangster rather than someone who needed help. She had been sent to the biggest women's prison in the country when she was 6 months pregnant, as she had no bail address. While behind bars, Rihanna was told a court order would be made to remove her baby at birth. Given evidence, she said she wondered at the time if I was being treated differently from other women in prison because of my race, because I was young, or because of my past. The teenager went in labour inside her prison cell in September 2019 and called an officer on the cell intercom to say she needed a nurse or an ambulance, but no help was called for, the inquest heard. Around half an hour later, she called again, despite being in unbearable pain, but the call was disconnected in the guard's control room. Announcing his conclusions at Surrey's Coroner Court in Woking, Senior Coroner for Surrey, Richard Travers, said baby Aisha's arrival into the world was not in the most harrowing of circumstances. Her mother was listening to the hearing via video link. The hearing was told the mum had failed to engage with maternity services and didn't have an ultrasound scan throughout her pregnancy, as she was scared her baby would be taken off her when she was born. She had disengaged with maternity care and feared there was no one outside who would be able to care for her child. On the day before Aisha was born in the early hours, her mum was supposed to have been monitored 5 times a day, but the nurse on duty admitted she had not been observed as she should have been, and this was unacceptable. A nurse had tried to get the mum moved to healthcare with the prison, but no bed was available at the time, she said. Tonight could be the night and she could give birth in her cell. Harrowing evidence from Miss Cleary was read to the court and revealed the tragic events on the night little Aisha was born and how her calls for help went unanswered. She said, I called on the bell and asked them to give me a effing nurse or an ambulance. I just knew I was in a lot of pain. I didn't understand why he was asking questions. I was so hot, I took off my clothes, so I was now naked. There was blood on the bed. My hands on the wall where I'd been holding. I was on all fours on the bed. I was in so much pain I couldn't scream or call out. I passed out. She added, when I woke up in the cell, I was on the bed. Aisha was between my legs and the cord was still attached. Aisha was purple and didn't seem to be breathing. I thought I should cut the cord. I didn't know what to do, so I bit through the cord and put the placenta in the bin. I then got into bed with Aisha. The coroner slammed prison officer Mark Johnson, who failed to send Miss Cleary any help. He said Mr. Johnson showed a complete disregard for her prisoner, and his failure meant she did not receive medical assistance with her labour. Since Aisha's death, NHS England and the Ministry of Justice have accepted that pregnancies in prison are high risk, echoing the finding of the Prisons and Probation Ombudsman Sue McAllister after an inquest. Coroners can issue recommendations on the prevention of future deaths to organise local authorities, government agencies or persons in order to try and stop similar deaths. Selin Kavkav, senior caseworker at Inquest, a charity providing expertise on state-related deaths, said, "We are disappointed that the coroner has decided not to issue a prevention of future deaths report following this inquest, which exposed one of the most dominant failures in our prison system. We have no faith that the changes which have been made by the prison will save further lives. There is a depressingly huge gap between policy and what happens behind closed doors. There is no reliable system for checking how these changes are implemented, and essentially no proper accountability when policies and procedures are completely ignored, like they were when Rihanna was pregnant in prison. Inquest knows this only too well. Prison is a disproportionate, inappropriate and dangerous response to women in conflict with the law, let alone those who are pregnant. We must urgently dismantle women's prisons and redirect resources to holistic, gender-responsive community services. Only then can we end the deaths of women and their babies in prison." Janie Starling, co-director of Level Up, a feminist group campaigning for an end to the imprisonment of pregnant women and new mothers, said, "The only way to prevent further deaths of babies in prison is to end the imprisonment of pregnant women. There are no amount of reforms that will ever make a prison a safer place for pregnant women when they remain trapped behind several sets of locked doors, inherently harsh conditions where care is substandard and at the mercy of prison officers' decision making." Now, I cannot imagine what it's been like in prison for a pregnant woman, and especially someone given birth behind that door with no help, no support at 18-year-old. It's absolutely ridiculous and horrendous. That should never have happened. And especially if he's on duty, that prison officer, the one that has been, well, I'm summarising that he's been sacked. Because something like this, if he hasn't been sacked for that, what does that say? A little girl, a brand new born baby, has lost a life because of his incompetency. I think I've said that right, bit of a tongue twister, that one there. Because he's been incompetent at his job and he's been lazy on the night shift, can't be asked to get up of his arse, go and check the cell bell, to check on a pregnant woman to see if she's safe. That little lass has lost her life. Just doesn't comprehend, does it? But this is what happens in the prisons. Like, the prisons are at full capacity. There's not enough staff on to look after all the inmates. The inmates are running wild, and the ones like this that need the help are being left unnoticed and having to go through ordeals like this, which shouldn't be happening in the first place. Someone like that's 18-year-old should be looked after by more than one officer. She should be put in a unit that cares for these type of inmates. But enough about that one. I've got enough for one more story, but it's just a short one, this. If I can find it. Where's it at? There it is. Ex-prison officer at the centre of drug smuggling ring. So here he is here. Martin Mills. What does it say, the headline? Ex-HMP Hewell officer at centre of drug smuggling ring. A prison officer who was at the centre of a smuggling ring supplying inmates with drugs and phones has been jailed. Martin Mills admitted smuggling drugs and B-list items, phones, while working at HMP Hewell, Worcestershire. Mills, 34, of Bromsgrove, who was found with prohibitive items in cereal boxes, appeared at Worcester Crown Court and was jailed for 4 years. 8 other people had been sentenced at the court at previous hearings after a long-running inquiry, police said. West Mercia Police said the investigation, which begun in April 2018, began with identifying prohibited items being brought into the prison near Redditch. It was quickly found that Martin Mills, a prison officer at HMP Hewell, was at the centre of a smuggling ring. He was stopped as he entered work and found to be smuggling items including drugs, mobile phones and SIM cards in boxes of cereal. As the investigation continued, the detectives linked several other people to the case, including prisoners on the blocks Mills worked on, as well as family members. Police said relatives of the prisoners would pay money into Mills' bank account and he would take prohibitive items to work for inmates to sell on in prison. Mills of Talbot Road was sentenced at the court on Monday. Well, doesn't look like they've been using the brains in this sort of operation, do they, by getting members of the family to put money into his bank account. The other 8 defendants had given sentences of between 4 years and 6 months, with some getting suspended sentences. Detective Constable Claire Masters, who led the long and complicated investigation, said, "I'm pleased that all those involved have now been brought to justice. Prisons should be a place of safety, and the actions of Mills and his accomplices threaten that. Drugs have no place in prison and hinder the rehabilitation of those who are there, often when they are at the most vulnerable." Now, I've done videos before about prison officers in prison and police officers in prison and what happens to them. But I'll tell you what will happen to the likes of Martin Mills. Because he's in prison for that sort of offence, he's been bringing contraband in for inmates. He's probably one of the screws that gets on with the inmate, where he obviously is, because he's been bringing stuff in for them. So he's probably got a good relationship with prisoners, even the ones that weren't involved in this. So the likes of Martin Mills won't be going on the VP wings. He won't be going on to protection. He'll be in amongst the other lads, and the other lads will welcome him in because of what he's in for. He's been helping the lads, and he'll probably be given inside information whilst he's in prison when the lads are wanting help with different things. So he'll probably become valuable to the other prisoners inside a prison. He'll probably get a hard time off the prison officers, especially if the ones... I don't think he'll be going to any prisons close to him or where it happened, but it'll probably be the prison officers that'll be giving him a hard time because of what he's in for. But I think I'll leave that one there for now, people. I've covered 3 stories in this episode. I will be doing more. Probably just do this once a week, midweek. But I will be doing other videos as well, so keep a look out on my other videos. I'm putting a few videos on a week. But again, if you are enjoying the content, remember to comment, like and subscribe to help get that algorithm up. And if you are wanting to join me Patreon to help the channel and get exclusive content, go along into the description box and click on the link, and I'll give you the link to my private Discord channel, which has a general chat section. It has a shout out for new members, so any new members, I'll be giving them shout outs on here live on YouTube. But I'll leave that one there for now, people. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.